Hi, everybody. I am Laura Graves Smith, and I'm going to be talking to you today about Chapter 4 from Sonny Magana's book, which focuses on transformational technology use. So, transformational technology use is really exciting. The main question that Sonny Magana wanted us to think about in this chapter was how can students use technology to represent what they know, what they are able to do, and how they think in ways that would not have been possible without that technology. So it's ways that are enabling students to learn at a higher level. Think about Bloom's taxonomy. And it's helping them to get to that higher level in a way that wouldn't have been possible without the use of the technology. So let's jump into it. All right, so the big ideas in this chapter were that Sonny Magana wants students to be at the center of their learning. They're not just passively receiving lectures from professors and just kicking back. They need to be taking an active role. They are making goals, tracking their progress, engaging in metacognition. They are in the center of their learning. They are doing the most work. The teacher sets the stage and then steps back, lets the students take charge and be responsible for their learning and the digital artifacts that they're creating to show their learning. So there's a lot of emphasis on student goal setting, self-assessment, metacognition. The technology that's being used should transform both the student, so they're being transformed in how they are engaging in their learning, and the role in how that learning is happening. So there need to be significant changes in the task and the engagement of the person. So for example, an e-reader is not transformational technology because think about the user's role. A user could be reading an e-reader or reading a book. Doesn't change the way that they are engaging with the material. It's just a different format. That is not transformational technology. That's just adding in technology that fills the same role. Using Google Slides, making a podcast, creating a slide deck like this and screencasting it, that is transformational technology because it's putting the student in the center of the learning, making them responsible for creating the digital artifact that shows their learning. And it wouldn't have been possible without the technology. So in chapter 4, he gave the example about when an oyster gets a bit of grit inside. Of course, at first it tries to spit it out. It's a struggle, kind of like when we have an assignment or a challenging topic that we need to learn about. We want to fight it. But if we really stick with it and take our time and work through it, it can become something beautiful, like a pearl of wisdom. So thank you for that beautiful metaphor, Sonny Magana. All right, so in transformational technology, students need to be setting their own goals for learning, reflecting as they go throughout the process. Excuse me. So they're not just, taking in knowledge, taking a quiz and moving on. They are reflecting on, am I understanding this material? How am I applying this material? What am I using it for? And am I getting closer to that mastery goal? So there's a really big emphasis on them tracking their own learning, showing what they know, and also reflecting on how they came to know it, right? It's not just passive, it's an active role. And they should be applying what they're learning to their peer community. So for example, in this assignment that I'm engaging in right now, I am creating a screencast video teaching my peers this material. So I am helping my peer community. Oh, it's transformational technology. And this is something that Sonny Magana would call class sourcing, where you're using the students in your class to create something that can be shared with each other and as well as other classes. Like maybe next year's class professor, as I might choose to show these videos to them as well. We are engaging in class sourcing through transformational technology. There's a really big emphasis on goal setting, self-reflection, thinking about our thinking, because that makes the students really stay present with their learning, makes them be active and not passive, right? That's the goal of transformational technology, active engagement, centering the student. So when they're thinking about their thinking, that is helping them to reflect on their progress towards mastery. Magana recommends using a 3-point scale that they can refer to, such as achieved mastery, not yet achieved mastery, not nearing mastery. So like a 3, 2, 1. But importantly, with that, there needs to be a space for like a short answer, either verbal or written, where students can say like, oh yeah, I'm really struggling with understanding this one piece of the equation, or oh, I feel like I'm making good progress, but I need to work more on my revision skills. So that way they can kind of voice what they're struggling with or where they have room for improvement. That's what's going to help guide their next steps. So he recommended that often the most authentic way to get that kind of a reflection would be an on the spot conversation with a student. So, yeah, it's great to give a paper or a journal time and have them reflect, fine. But the really true best way to capture their feelings and accurate reflections on their progress would be just to pause them and be like, hey, how are you doing on this assignment? So, for example, this week I went to office hours with Dr. Adams, and while I was talking about one topic with him, he jumped in with, by the way, what did you think of the video you watched this week on perusal? So he was giving me a moment for authentic reflection where I could kind of work through what did I understand and glean from that video. So we see in these ETEC programs that there's a lot of transformational technology happening, which is great. Another thing that helps students to be centered in their learning is to shift the locus of control from the teacher to the student. This is like the flipped classroom model. So when you're shifting the locus of control to the student, one way to do that is to change the language of classroom rules to something more like classroom promises and commitments. So in an elementary classroom, that might look something like, I promise to keep my hands to myself. In the college level, that might be something like, I commit to citing AI if I use AI in any of my assignments. So it's changing the language instead of like, you must do this, to, hey, this is what I'm agreeing to do for the good of the class and for the good of my own learning. And it's really important that these promises and commitments come from the students, not from the professor. The professor or the teacher should not be telling you what you promised to do. You need to be brainstorming with your peers, what will make me be successful in this class, and then committing to doing those things. So that's also going into goal setting and self-assessment, checking in, am I keeping the commitments that I made? And if I'm not, what do I need to change to get me there? So there's a term that Magana used. He was not the first to coin this term. It came from the 1970s, but he adopted it. It's prosumer. So a prosumer is a producer and a consumer. So he felt the ideal type of students should be prosumers. So they are taking in information. Oh, I see I have the audience member behind me. Prosumers are taking in information and creating something with that information. So they are not just passive consumers of information. They're digesting that information and then taking the technology available to them and using it to produce something that shows their learning. So let's all work to be prosumers. All right, so if there's two big takeaways from this chapter, it's that transformational technology requires that the student is taking an active role in their learning. So I included this photo of a student who is participating in making a podcast. She is taking an active role in sharing information that she learned. She is using technology to get a form of engagement that otherwise might not be possible. If she was just talking in her classroom and not recording it on a podcast, she wouldn't be able to share that with as many people. So this is a great use of transformational technology, recording a podcast. The other big idea that I want you to take away is that the creation of the work, right, what Magana calls the digital artifact, should be demonstrating the higher level thinking, the way of processing that information and creating something. And it needs to be something that would not have been possible without including that technology, right? Not something like an e-reader, something like Screencastify. Okay, so those are our two big takeaways from the chapter. So this project that I am engaging in right now and that my audience is enjoying and learning from is a great example of transformational technology, because here I am centered in my learning, taking an active role in digesting these details that I read in chapter 4, creating this slide deck, and now using technology through Google Slides and Screencastify to record my presentation, put it out into the internet for others to learn from. So thank you, Dr. Rizai, for the opportunity to utilize transformational technology, and I hope to see all of my peers continue to use transformational technology going forward. Thank you so much.